Hello everybody, this is Tim here again with another video. This time it's of course a commentary for Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And for people that don't know, when I'm doing these commentaries like this, instead of like giving you a count to 1, 2, 3, when the video starts off, I'm just automatically doing the commentary for the movie. So if you wanted to sync up, kind of just rewind this and go back to the beginning and start the movie if you really want to link up with me. But yeah, we got Nightmare on Elm Street 2 here, Freddy's Revenge. I think this movie might take place like 4 or 5 years later after the last movie. But at the same time, I think this film was really rushed into production so it could kind of capitalize on the success of the first movie, because New Line Cinema at the time was kind of an up-and-coming studio. Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. I kind of like how it's in like this hard steel looking like letters and stuff when it says Freddy's Revenge, which is kind of automatically a weird title because it's like, who the hell is Freddy getting revenge on? It really doesn't make any sense really when you think about it. It's just one of those generic like sequel titles like The Revenge of Whoever and all that. It's just like a title that it feels like they just kind of slapped on there, but it's fine. One cool thing here is you got Robert Englund doing the playing the bus driver right here in a little cameo. What's funny is he's doing it right here, like right as like, and Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger, the title credit like pops over him. That's pretty funny. I never even actually noticed that till now. But yeah, that's cool that they got Robert Englund in a little cameo as the bus driver. That's pretty neat. You got Mark Patton here as the Jesse character. He's kind of like this weird, awkward-looking emo type kid right here in the dream sequence. He doesn't really look like this to the rest of the movie, so I suppose this is just kind of supposed to be like his inner self, how Jesse kind of sees himself as the outsider kid or whatever. Music by Christopher Young. Like, he did the Hellraiser score, I believe. That's a great score. Here, I like this score. I think it's good. I think it suits this movie. It doesn't really suit like in a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and that's kind of my big problem with this movie. That's kind of the good thing and the bad thing about this movie. Like, I have a review for this movie from a long while back, a few years ago, and I gave this movie like a 2.5 stars out of 4 as like an alright like movie. But honestly, my thoughts on it have kind of changed. Like, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, the classic one, is like a masterpiece of like nightmares, like, you know, in terms of like pure horror and all the cool dream stuff, like nightmare stuff in that movie, visual wise. Here in this one, like as a sequel to the first Nightmare on Elm Street, this film is a disaster. It has a cult following and stuff, which is really cool, and that's neat that that it has a cult following. But really, as like a sequel to a Nightmare on Elm Street, this film really doesn't work at all. But if you listen to like Jack Shoulder and stuff when it comes to this movie, he pretty much said that he didn't want to really make a sequel to a Nightmare on Elm Street. He just wanted to kind of take the character of Freddy Krueger and do his own movie. Like, he's not even a fan of the original Nightmare on Elm Street, which is fine. I mean, not everybody's going to like the same stuff. But at the same time, it's weird that you would hire a director who doesn't even like the original movie to do a sequel to the original movie. That is kind of weird. But Jack Shoulder did The Hidden, which was awesome. Other than that, though, he's kind of hit or miss for me. But when it comes to this film right here, this is more of just a standalone horror movie that happens to be part of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and that's kind of the reason why a lot of people don't like it. But at the same time, that's also the reason that a lot of people do like it, because I think a lot of people that do like this movie are able to just accept this film for what it is. And just I've kind of learned, like, watching this film now and getting the idea that it doesn't really work as a sequel to that first film, even if you want to accept it as a movie that goes in its own direction, like an own direction sequel, it still really doesn't work, because the character of Freddy here is like totally different. Like, the way he acts and stuff is almost totally different from that first movie. Like, him wanting to like possess a boy's body and all that. This is like a total 180 to anything that Freddy was really representing and was like in that first movie. But I do think it works in the context of this movie. I think this is like, if I was to review this movie now, I would give it a 3 out of 4. To me, this is a good, fine B 80s horror movie. That's how I feel about this. It's a good, fine B 80s possession horror movie, and I think it's good for what it is. Like, to me, Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, is more of an A+ horror movie. This is like a B level horror movie, which is fine. I think this movie works for what it is, but it is really noticeable that when you watch the franchise, the ones that are directed by Craven and have his influence, those are the ones that really feel like A movies, really. He really knows the character and like his creation, obviously the best out of everybody. Like, all the movies that have his influence, 1, 3, and 7, are the most high quality. The rest of them, other than the ones that he was mostly involved with or directed, do come off more just like B movie horror slashers, which is fine. But at the same time, you can really feel the quality shift difference. That's a really cool miniature like dream sequence right there with the ground falling out from under the bus and stuff. Really cool dream sequence stuff. it does make me wonder, had this film been more in the vein of what was worked in the first one, and they kind of expanded on that and stuff. This movie really does feel like they didn't really know what they had at the time, because they rushed it into production to capitalize on the success of that first film. So I think they felt that they just had to do something like that was totally different, is what it is. I think that's where they were coming from. They were like, well, if people like that first one, in order to make a successful second one, we should just do something, totally different. They just had like the wrong GPS for this movie at the time, but I can forgive it because it's obvious they didn't really know what they had at the time. But as like a standalone horror movie, which to me is what this really is, I think this is a good movie, a good B horror flick. Good tension right here with Robert Englund as Freddy, like scraping the seats. I will say this, I like Freddy's makeup better in this one than the first one. It's a totally different look here. Freddy, his character, himself in this one is played by Robert Englund slightly different than he was in the first movie, because he's written to be somewhat different here as a character than he was in that first movie. He's more like a possession, like dream demon in this one, really. But yeah, I like the makeup better in this one than I do the first one. I just think it's scarier and kind of more intimidating looking. In the first one, he looked more just like a standard like burn victim type look, which was creepy and worked with that Grindhouse type original film. But I think the look here for this one feels like it's specifically designed to play off on the fact that this is like a demonic possession movie. Like, this feels almost more like an Amityville sequel than it does like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, to be honest. And that's fine. Of course, the one thing I have to talk about in terms of this movie is the gay subtext. You can't really talk about this movie and not bring up the gay subtext, because it's all over the movie. And it's what it is, though, is when you watch the movie, like, the gay subtext doesn't actually play into the movie really too much. I mean, it is part of the movie in terms of subtext, and at certain points it kind of overtakes the movie, but at the same time it really does feel like they were trying to make like a standard possession horror film here, and just really were trying to have the gay stuff as like a subtext thing here. It is kind of ballsy for an 80s movie to be like a gay subtext horror movie. That's a really interesting route for like an 80s horror movie, because that's not something you would imagine they would really do in the 80s, but it's kind of cool that they would do that here. I'm not sure if like a new Freddy movie would ever take this kind of tact that this movie did with the whole gay subtext and stuff. I don't know if they would ever do this again with because Freddy's so mainstream now. But it is cool, though, that they actually did go this direction with at least one of these films. That's the interesting thing about the Nightmare series. They always try to play on like different like teenage subtexts and stuff like that. Like part 5 tries to deal with teenage pregnancy and everything, and this one's like obviously trying to be like a movie about repressed homosexuality and stuff, which is interesting. You could also almost see the character of Jesse as like a bisexual character, really, that's kind of torn between the fact that he likes the female girl in here, as well as having a crush on like his jock friend in here, who they kind of have like a love-hate relationship. I always really liked that relationship with him and Grady in this movie. And Kim Myers in here, I know she hates this. I've heard she hates this, but she does look identical to Meryl Streep, and people have said that like a billion times to her, I'm sure, but she really does. Like, when I watched this movie as a kid, I would always get confused thinking that she was Meryl Streep. I was like, Meryl Streep, the actress who went on to do like all these big movies, was in a horror flick? I really did think this was Meryl Streep for a long time before I learned who it was. But she looks identical to Meryl Streep, almost to the point where she could be the friggin' stunt double. I like the guy that plays Grady on here. He's a really likable actor and character. It's just really funny how his relationship with Jesse is, because they start off like not liking each other, seems like it, but then they just kind of like become friends with like a love-hate relationship. It's pretty funny, really. Like, part of me wonders like what this film would have been like if it really was just like its own like straight up gay subtext horror movie, instead of like trying to be a Freddy Krueger movie or to have his character in it at all. I honestly think this movie might have played better. It's just really like its complete own thing without Freddy Krueger and everything, but at the same time, having Freddy in it is what makes the film kind of so interesting from a standpoint, because it's something that you would never think you would see in a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. The guy that plays Coach Snyder there, or whatever, I recognize that actor. It's Marshall Bell, I think. He was also in the movie Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was in Total Recall. Yeah, he's good. I like him as like a character actor. I think he was also in Starship Troopers, but it's been a long time since I've seen that one. Mark Patton does a great job in this movie, but the weird thing about this one is it's a male lead in this movie, but he's not playing it like a protagonist, really. He's playing it like a victim. That's the interesting thing about this one, is the main character's Jesse, and I think that's what kind of loses some people with this one, even like as a standalone horror movie, is the main character in this film. And I think the thing with this movie is it's not really a slasher film, really. This is a straight up possession movie. I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really even have any slashing until the end when Freddy pops out the pool party. This is really just a movie about a victim guy who's kind of feminine and is kind of wimpy, who gets took over by Freddy Krueger because he's easy to manipulate because he's not really a fighter. The interesting thing about the gay subtext in this movie and stuff is I don't really feel like Mark Patton himself is playing the character as gay. I know the actor in real life is gay, and I like Mark Patton. He's a nice guy. But I think his acting is good here. But really, I feel like Mark Patton is playing the character as straight. Like, if it wasn't for the gay subtext in this movie and the screaming that he does, I don't really think the character itself would play as like gay or bisexual, to be honest. Because, of course, one thing this movie's famous for is like over-the-top feminine scream or whatever. But at the same time, I can kind of forgive that because Jesse in this movie is meant to be like a wimp. So him screaming like that does make sense to me. It wouldn't make sense for him to have like a real like manly type scream or anything. Not this character. Because that's the thing here, is unlike the first movie where it was Nancy as the star and she like toughens up and takes Freddy out. In this movie, this guy's just like a victim through the entire movie. Like the whole movie here, this dude is a victim. And I think that kind of turns a lot of people off about this one because they're looking at it from the perspective of being like a Freddy Krueger movie. So I think they get turned off by the fact that we got a supposed protagonist here that we think is going to end up like Nancy, end up fighting back against Freddy Krueger and all that. And really, he's just kind of a wimp to the whole movie. Like, honestly, he's a victim to the whole film. And I think that kind of turns a lot of people off. But at the same time, I think it works for the movie that this is, being a possession horror film, because that is what this is. This is not a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. This is its own thing, and I think it works for what it is. However, I don't think this franchise would have survived if it kept doing stuff like this, like just doing standalone type horror movie stuff with Freddy in it like this movie does. Like if they had done something else like this with the third movie instead of a real sequel that capitalized on why that first movie worked so well, I think this franchise probably would have died after about 3 movies. To be honest. We got Mark Patton here waking up. I think Mark Patton does a great job in this movie, playing the victim in this movie, though. Because he's obviously meant to just be like a pretty boy who's kind of like a wimpy type kid who's easy to push around and stuff. And I think he does a great job playing the victim in this movie. That was a cool scene with like Freddy looking in the window and you kind of saw like Freddy's silhouette or shadow or whatever. That was pretty cool. I also really like this horror scene right here where the character Jesse is sneaking behind the house to look in it to see what's going on, of course, because he sees the light coming from the basement. And Freddy's like taking body parts like out of the furnace. That's pretty cool. I like that. This movie does have some good horror imagery. It's just like the whole GPS of this movie, though, is directly opposed to what worked so well in that original movie. The thing is it's okay to do a sequel that goes in a different direction, but it's not okay to do a franchise sequel or a sequel to a movie, even though it wasn't a franchise yet. It's not okay to do a sequel to a movie that goes completely against everything that worked the best in that original Nightmare film. That's the problem with this movie. Like, had this movie been more focused on, like, Freddy haunting the dreams of, like, multiple kids and stuff, and been more focused on the dream imagery and things like that really worked in that original, and had Freddy, like, just trying to possess this kid through the dream world because he was, like, weak from his battle with Nancy in the first film, that would have played much better and felt more like a spiritual continuation of that first film. But really, this is just like a standalone horror demon possession movie, really. This movie is more like Amityville 2, The Possession, than it is anything like a Nightmare on Elm Street. And that when I saw this movie for the first time as a kid, I actually did hate this one because it was so out there and different from the others. But when I watched this movie in context, when I was a little bit older, and after learning about how it is and all that, and how it came to be, and how the director was trying to just do his own thing with Freddy Krueger, the character, then I learned to accept the movie for what it is. And I think this is a good standalone horror movie. I like this movie for what it is. I just don't like it as a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. And I do like that Freddy himself is still scary in this, just like he was in that first film, because as everybody knows, once they get into part 3, they even though I really like part 3, it's obvious that one has a much more mainstream bent to it, and that Freddy is becoming much more of the mainstream star at that point. He's the star of the franchise by the end of part 3. It's all about him now. They went from Nightmare on Elm Street movies to Freddy movies at that point, which is naturally where something like this would go. The same thing with Friday the 13th. And that's a great scene right there with a cool special effect where Freddy tears off part of his head. You got the body and I got the brain. That's cool. I think some people will just be turned off about this movie too because of the gay subtext. They just won't be into it, because Americans do have that kind of sexuality fear thing or whatever. They don't really like getting too sexual with stuff, especially when it's like a gay type thing or a gay theme. It does kind of weird them out, but this type of movie would do more for foreign audiences and stuff. And the reason Americans are like that is because we've been taught to be really sexually repressed here, which is really interesting because everybody keeps screaming, be more liberal with stuff, be more liberal with stuff, but at the same time we always try to repress ourselves. So it is kind of funny when you think about it. Robert Russler plays Grady. He was also in the TV movie Sometimes They Come Back, if you've ever seen it, the Stephen King flick, which was directed by Tom McLaughlin, who also did Jason Lives. That was an alright TV movie. For an early 90s movie, I think it was. Yeah, that was alright. That's one I would like to pick. I did a review for that one a long while back. I would like to pick that up on DVD at some point. I think a movie like this is for people who are more fans of actual horror movies in general than people who are just Freddy fans. I think people who are just like Freddy and Jason are more of and Michael Myers are more of not just horror characters for horror fans. They've become so popular in pop culture that they're more for just the mainstream as well. So those characters play to more of a bigger, huger audience. That's why they do so much better. Their sequels do and remakes do than traditional horror films. This movie right here is more for people who like horror films in general and you want to kind of experience the stuff that horror movies offer, and not just people who are just fans of Freddy in general and just want kind of a Freddy movie. I feel like, anyway. This is a really weird scene, though, right here with the snake wrapping around the dude, because it really doesn't fit at all. How the snake belongs to the dude here, who I'm assuming is the biology teacher, who the friggin' snake escaped and got on Mark Patton, and the guy's mouthing off to Mark Patton because I guess he thinks that he must have stolen the snake or something, but he was looking right at the dude. The dude obviously hasn't moved, so how the frig did the snake manage to sneak out of the thing and get all the way over there to him? Or maybe the dude just really loves his snake. Who the hell knows? But that's always kind of a weird scene. It was funny though when Mark Patton gave Robert Russler, Grady's character, the finger, though. That did make me laugh. Interesting thing here is that Kim Myers' character, Lisa, is obviously rich, in the neighborhood. She's got this big ass pool and a big gate and everything and a really nice looking house. She's obviously got a lot of money. Why the hell is she going to this average school? That really is interesting when you think about it. Why is she even going to this school? Because it seems like these people have a lot of cash. So why are they even bothering sending her to public school? Wouldn't this chick be going to some kind of private school or something in another county or something? Why the hell are these people still even in Springwood? And what are they doing that's making them so much money? It's kind of weird when you think about it. Oh, another thing, the guy that plays the dad here, Clu Gulager, I think is his name. He was awesome in Return of the Living Dead, the classic zombie movie, which is one of the best zombie flicks ever made. Very EC, Tales from the Crypt comic style, which I'm assuming the people who are listening to this commentary probably get all the references I'm making, because you're obviously a horror fan if you're listening to the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 commentary. This scene right here is really hysterical. I know they said they were trying to do a tribute thing to Risky Business or whatever with Tom Cruise dancing and all that, and that's what they're kind of doing with Jesse here. But the difference here in the way that they have Mark Patton play it in this movie is they're having him play it really feminine and over the top, really sexualized, with his bouncing his ass to knock the drawers in on his desk and all that. It's really silly the way they're playing it here and very campy. It's not in a real fun 80s way. It's just really weird. This movie has really weird sexual undertones to it to fit with the gay subtext and all that of the movie that it's going for about sexuality and stuff like that. That really really don't fit anything from that first Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I mean, not really. There were some like sexual themes with Freddy in that first movie, but not to like the level that they're doing here. And of course, people point out he has like no chicks allowed on the door there. In a way, this movie is like really funny if you really actually think about it. Part of me wishes though that they would have had the balls to just make the character gay, because obviously he's meant to, like, the whole homosexual thing is meant to be like a subtext thing, and maybe he's like a repressed, gay person, or repressed bisexual guy or something, because obviously he does have a crush on the Lisa character. I mean, the way the movie plays it, he obviously does. So I've never seen this character as like really straight up gay. I mean, or like secretly gay, like in terms of subtext. To me, this plays more like a guy who's like bisexual or something, and is trying to like repress his sexual desires for men. Really, that's what it really seems like to me. Because it's obvious that he has a thing for the Lisa character too. I know you can say, well, he's not making a lot of moves on her and stuff like that, but he does eventually. He's like making out with her and stuff. And I guess you could say by that point though that he is kind of secretly gay because of the tongue and stuff that comes out of his mouth. You could see that as like the metaphor for like his gayness later in the movie that's coming out and makes him like run away to go to the dude's room. I mean, you could see this as just a straight up gay character who like wants to be straight or something. But I think you could also see this as just like a bisexual dude who's just really confused. Either way, either way you see it, I think it plays fine either direction. I like this little tie that they do though to the original film, with Nancy having a diary and stuff. Even though we didn't see that in the original film, I mean, it's not hard to believe that off screen she was like writing a diary or something. I mean, she's a teenage girl. It's not hard to believe she was using a diary or something. Even though I like this film as a standalone horror film, like I've talked about before, I don't think this film works at all as a Nightmare on Elm Street film. And I can see why a Nightmare on Elm Street fan would hate this movie, because it really doesn't work. But I think people who are willing to accept this film for what it is will enjoy it. It still is very interesting to me, though, that somebody would even attempt to make like a gay themed possession horror movie. Though it really is interesting, like in the '80s, that somebody would even attempt to do that for something that would be like playing to mainstream audiences and stuff and teenagers. But I guess at this point, Freddy wasn't really mainstream. They were still trying to play to the strict like horror audience that liked the first one, really. Yeah, and you got a lot more like shots and stuff to deal with the house and stuff in this. This is much more of just a haunted house possession movie. I like when he looks over here and he sees like I believe it's here in this sequence that he looks over here and sees like the record like melting or whatever on the desk. Yeah, that's really cool. Freddy's screwing with him, like haunting the house as like he's like a haunted house possession demon in this, as compared to the first one where he was more like a dream killer who was like out for revenge. When it comes to the commentaries I'm going to be doing for the Nightmare on Elm Street films, like it was a long while back when I believe it was like a year ago when I did the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So it has been a while since I've really done a commentary for one of these movies. But I keep wondering to myself, should I do a commentary for the remake, really? Because that is easily my least favorite of this franchise. Because it just has no imagination. So I do wonder if I will bother to do a commentary for that one. I guess I probably will, because I am a completist. So why the hell not? Just do it anyway. I like the horror in this film, though. I like that it sticks to being scary still with this one. Part of me wonders, like, did Jack Shoulder take inspiration from like Amityville type movies and stuff like that when he made this film? I've heard Jack Shoulder say in interviews that he doesn't like the original Nightmare and he actually prefers New Nightmare. I can see that from a certain angle because New Nightmare is really kind of a different like beast than that original film. It gets going for different themes and stuff, more about like what horror means to the world and all that, and like how making an iconic character like affects the people who work on it and stuff. I like that the glove is still here from the last film. That's cool. I like how Freddy is like trying to goad the guy into killing for him and all that so he can take over his body. That's pretty neat. I think this might have actually have played better though if he was like trying to goad Jesse's character into killing people who are like mean to him and stuff like that, you know? And that was how he took over his body like through the dream world and stuff, was to like inspire him to kill people that he didn't like. Like if they really played this more as a straight possession slasher instead of a possession like haunted house movie, I think that might have worked a little better in terms of being a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I like the ambiance of this movie though. I like the like atmosphere. It has a good good 80s like horror atmosphere to it that really works. It's still kind of got a little bit of that grindhouse edge of that first film that I really like that lower budget grindhouse type edge like 80s movie of that first one kind of had. Like you can really feel the shift in the third one to like going mainstream by the end as compared to these first two. And I think if you're somebody from a personal taste level who kind of prefers the feeling of these first two movies, I think you actually might not like part three. But I think as even though I prefer the feel of these first two Nightmare films more than like part three, I still think part three is easily a much better like Nightmare on Elm Street movie than this one. But yeah, we got Mark Patton here doing jogging with Robert Russler. I really like the chemistry between these two. They got really good chemistry. Honestly, he has better chemistry with Robert Russler than he does Kim Myers, which is pretty funny and does fit like the subtext of the movie. Well, here we got the token scene where the evil gym teacher's like standing behind him while they're talking about him. I never like scenes like that in movies because they're always so like, oh boy, he's there listening to him. Like, surprise, he was hearing you the whole time. I always get bored with stuff like that. It's so glitch at this point, and looking back on it and seeing it in movies is just such a glitch thing. Here we got the infamous scene in this movie coming up here where Freddy's like haunting the lovebirds in the movie and making them go crazy, and one of them bursts into flames. Like, this doesn't feel anything like what something Freddy would do. This feels like something like a haunted house demon would do. So that's what I'm saying. Like, Freddy's character in this movie is totally different than what he was representing in that first film. Like, these exploding birds right here in a minute, like bursting into flames, do not fit that original Nightmare on Elm Street movie and what it was going for at all. And at the same time, even taking this as a standalone horror movie, this exploding bird part is pretty goofy. And doesn't really need to be in the movie. Like, this is even though I like this film, this is a moment and scene that I would have been happy if it was deleted. I'm not a big fan of the attacking tiny bird scene here. The actress in this movie who plays the mother, though, Jesse's mother, I think her name is Hope Lang. I believe she was like Oscar nominated. I think she actually got a nomination for an Oscar. And I think the girl on here who plays the sister or whatever, who is honestly almost like a non-character because she really doesn't add anything to the movie. Like, I get why she's there to kind of like round the family out, but really you don't really need her. But I think the actress, though, actually went on to be in like Children of the Corn 2, maybe, who played like the love interest in that movie, and she was like smoking hot in that film. Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice. I'm pretty sure that was her. Which is kind of weird when you think about it, because you're watching a movie here where she's like a little kid, of course, and then you think about Children of the Corn 2 where she's like really hot. So it's kind of weird when you think about it. It's almost like when you grow up watching like a child actor or something like that when she's a kid, and you're watching them as a kid, and then you see them when you're older and like they're an adult or something, and they grow up to be like really attractive, and you're like, whoa. You think about them in such a different weird way at that point. This is hilarious though, when his dad on here is like talking about him using like a cherry bomb or whatever. That's so hilarious in like an 80s silly 80s way. It's so funny. It's like he blew up the bird with a cherry bomb or whatever. It's also funny when the guy that plays the dad, he's like, maybe it was that cheap seed you've been buying. He's talking to the wife. That's hilarious. Some great 80s comedy in this one. It's really this sequence like right here that really tells on the film. This sequence that's like coming up that really lets you know where this film is going. See, like you got the lightning like striking inside the house and hitting the plates or whatever. See, that really makes no sense from like the standpoint of it being Freddy Krueger. Like, why is he doing that? But at the same time, though, it fits what this movie's going for. And see this sequence like right here, like a lightning strikes the inside of the house, so he decides to walk out naked and head to like a bisexual bar or a gay bar. So it's like, why? See, it makes no sense in the context of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, but it works here because this lets you know like what this movie's going for. This is obviously a repressed like gay kid. It tells you right here what this movie is, and how you feel about this will determine whether or not you can jive with this movie as a movie. Part of me wonders though, like how people in the 80s watching this reacted to this. Because it's made in the 80s, so people were more like naive and stuff, and probably didn't get like the whole subtext thing and stuff like that when they were watching it as kids and stuff in the theater. So part of me does wonder like how they reacted to this movie and stuff. I've heard some other people say like how like they never saw the gay subtext in this movie, and I'm sure that's what the writer was hoping for this movie. Like he was probably wanting you to see it as a possession movie, but without the but to just see like the subtext there. He was probably wanting to have it like both ways, you know, to have the movie work that way, both ways. But yeah. Oh, and Robert Shea was there in the leather bar as the bartender, which is really funny. He looks so hilarious right there. But yeah, the writer was probably wanting to have it like both ways, but really the subtext just kind of overtakes the movies, causing sequences like this, they really make no sense in context of the movie unless you accept the fact that what the subtext is telling you is that this kid is secretly gay, because it makes no sense otherwise that this random teenage boy would go out in the middle of the night barefoot and walk to a gay bar. It really makes no sense otherwise unless you accept the fact that this is a repressed gay kid. Otherwise, there's no logic to it at all. Freddy seems to come out of Jesse like every time he falls asleep now. Like he's worn down his willpower and he just kind of takes over his body and comes out of him when he falls asleep. Because the way the scene is shot here in the shower, like with the way Jesse's like turning his head and stuff and closing his eyes, it does give off the impression that he is falling asleep in the shower. So I guess we're supposed to assume that when Jesse falls asleep, Freddy can just like come out of him and just like kill whoever he wants to, which that would be kind of an interesting idea for a sequel to A Nightmare on Elm Street, that Freddy was wanting to like come out of dreams and stuff and kill people. And I think in the original script for this movie they had a reason for why Freddy was wanting to kill people in the real world, and they just deleted it. Mistake, because if that's true and they did have a reason for it, they should have left it in. That would have made this film feel more like a actual sequel to that first film. I believe in the original script the point was that Freddy was weakened after the battle from the ending of the first movie, and that he was using Jesse to kill people because he needed the support or whatever. I think that may have been in a maybe not in the original script for this movie, but may have been in like an alternate draft for this movie. But we got what we got here, and this is really a standalone horror film, like I said. Yeah, Freddy's much more of like a ghost or a demon here. Whenever the Jesse like falls asleep or whatever, Freddy can just like come directly into the real world and just kill whoever he wants to. But he also comes with all of his powers, because obviously what the ending of the first film was saying, because that was meant to be a standalone horror film, what the ending of that first film was saying was that the whole film was a dream and that Nancy thinks she wakes up at the end, but she really doesn't. So that movie was pretty much just all a dream, really. If you take it as a standalone movie, that's what it is, which that was what it was meant to be. But here in this film, it really doesn't make any sense why Freddy has all his powers in the real world. It really doesn't make any sense in context of that first movie. But like I said, though, this is really a standalone horror movie. Like that first Nightmare on Elm Street movie operated on much more of a psychological level. When it comes to stuff like with Freddy's tongue coming out of the phone and stuff, that was supposed to make you wonder in that film, was Nancy actually dreaming and stuff like that at the time? And of course, the big twist at the end of that original one, as a standalone movie, which is what it was meant to be, is that Nancy was dreaming the entire movie. That was obviously what they were going for in that original movie. Even though Craven was kind of forced to change the ending to an ending where Freddy lives and it sets up for a sequel. But with this movie, it's all about like the horrors of repressed sexuality and stuff like that, which is a really interesting way to go for like an 80s horror movie. Oh, Freddy coming out of the shadows right here looks really bad, like coming out of the smoke and stuff, because the guy walks like really bad. It looks like a stuntman. It doesn't look like Robert Englund. And that was because when they first started making this movie, I think there was kind of a money dispute. Like, the story changes depending on who's telling it, but according to people who have talked about it, there was like a money dispute with Robert Englund, and they didn't actually want to go. They weren't actually going to go with Robert Englund at first, but then the actor that they hired was so, like, he lumbered like a Frankenstein type stuntman type thing, and it really didn't work for the character at all. So they were like, we got to get Robert Englund back. So they got him back. And that's the thing right there, like with Jesse screaming like that right there, I think people who want like more of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie with more of a tough like protagonist that learns to fight for himself and all that, they're really not going to get that here. And I think that a lot of people are going to be disappointed with this as a sequel to that original film. Because when Jesse screams like a girl and stuff like that, that lets you know that this really is a wimpy character who is a person who just can't deal with the fact that he's gay, really. And it like the movie works for what it is, but like I said, it just does not work as a sequel to that first Nightmare film, because Jesse just is not interesting as a character compared to the Nancy character in that first film. Unless you're someone who like can self-identify with this character, who has like had problems with your sexuality and all that, I don't think a lot of people are gonna be able to really identify with this character because of how weak and stuff he is. But at the same time, though, I think it works in the context of the movie that this is. But it just doesn't work as a sequel to A Nightmare on Elm Street. It just isn't that interesting to go from a character like Nancy, who toughened up and defended herself and all that, to just go to a character who's just a straight wimp for the whole movie. It just really does not work as well doing that. It's just not as interesting. I do think that a movie like this, though, like, can and could help, like, maybe teenagers and stuff like that, and people in general who have like problems with their sexuality and stuff, and has had it like repressed and stuff like that. And if it has helped people like that, then that is good. And like I said, I do like this movie, but as what it is, instead of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, because it really isn't. And even if you, like I said before, even if you take this movie like into account that there was no franchise yet and just compare it directly to the first movie, it still doesn't work as a sequel to that first film. Even as a sequel that goes its own direction, it still doesn't work because it doesn't continue the stuff that worked the best in that first movie. This movie goes so far in a different direction that it becomes its own thing, is what it is. I really like Robert Russell in this film. Part of me kind of wishes they would have just went all out. Like I've mentioned this before, but really a big part of me wishes they would have just went all out with this and just made this a movie about a gay guy, really. Just make it a horror movie about a gay guy instead of the repressed sexuality thing, even though that is kind of interesting. Part of me kind of wishes they would have just made it a movie about a gay guy and just had him and Robert Russell in a romance, because they have like way better chemistry than he does with Lisa. I mean, to be honest. I like this scene right here. With the glove like moving on its own and stuff inside the drawer. That's really cool. Also, I like this sequence right here as well, where Jesse walks over to his sister's room and he's obviously dreaming here, and she's like doing jump rope to the Freddy song. That's pretty creepy. This movie isn't as scary and tense as that first movie, but it has like some really creepy moments to it, like this moment right here. But I always found this creepy, like his little sister like jumping rope to the Freddy song. I always found that cool. I just like the imagery here. Like that's the thing, even with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies that aren't as good, and this movie's not a bad movie, like I've said, for what it is, but even for the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, like the lesser ones, because obviously this isn't as good as that first movie, like they still have really cool dream imagery, and that's kind of the problem I had with the remake, is it's just so flat. That movie was just so lifeless in terms of the dream stuff. Like as I'm watching this film, I've mentioned this already a few times, but it really fascinates me that this is a gay subtext horror flick from the 80s. It's just something that you really don't think you're going to get. What's interesting though about this movie is like when it was made and all that, like the reviews for this film are still like mostly negative critically. I wonder like with how like everybody keeps talking about doing woke stuff and all that, and I don't consider this movie woke or anything, but I just mean with today's generation and all that, when people are like talking about we should be more woke and more diverse and do movies about all different kinds of cultures and be inclusive about everything and all that. So part of me wonders, like, if this film came out today, would critics give it good reviews just based off the fact that it was a horror movie about a gay character or a repressed gay character? Like, would they just automatically give it good reviews because of that? I do wonder about that. Because it does seem like now, because everything's kind of become like an agenda driven thing, that it does seem like critics specifically reward certain movies just based off the fact that they have an agenda, whether or not they're done well or not. And this film, honestly, for the subject matter that they're going for here with a repressed like gay kid, I think they're doing it decent, in my opinion. I also like the name of Jesse's car, the Deadly Dinosaur. That's pretty funny. I did think this was cool, like going back to the factory and stuff where Freddy Krueger worked. That's pretty cool. Like, yeah, going to the power plant and stuff, I guess, which is also supposed to be the boiler room where Freddy Krueger worked, and that's why when they have nightmares about him and stuff, it's in the boiler room and stuff like that. Because this is where he worked, and where he took little kids and killed them and stuff was in this place. That's pretty cool. Stuff like this really makes me want like a Nightmare on Elm Street prequel. Of course, it's too late now. I mean, if they did a prequel movie now, they would have to get somebody to play like the young Robert Englund and like get Robert Englund for like the final of the movie or whatever when the dude was like set on fire. Or they would have to take like an actor and like add prosthetics to his face or something to make him look like Robert Englund for the climax of the movie for when he was set on fire. But it actually would be kind of interesting to see that and to see like if it was done well, that is, and to see who they would hire to play like a young John Saxon and stuff like that. That could be really interesting. But But at the same time, though, that has the risk of like overexposing the character of Freddy and just explaining, because, well, pretty much through the course of these movies, they do kind of add more and more to like Freddy's backstory with each movie. So by the time you do get to Freddy's Dead, pretty much everything you could want to know about Freddy is pretty much explained. So at the same time, while it would be interesting to see that, because seeing all the backstory they do have in these movies does make you think you could make an interesting movie out of that. At the same time, maybe it wouldn't have the impact needed, because we do know so much by the time we finish this series about Freddy's like real life human self by the time we get to the end. So really, would the impact be there, because we all know how it's going to end and what's going to happen. So I mean, you would have to add some kind of surprising element to it to make it interesting in a certain way, something that we didn't really know about Freddy's backstory. Maybe you could add like a child character or something, who's like a little girl or something that Freddy's like chasing after or something like that. And you could have like her be the main reason or whatever by the end of it, that Freddy is like set on fire, and you could have that as like his first dream kill. Like he comes back and kills that girl specifically first when she's older, like before the start of the first movie. You could do something like that. Or you could maybe make it like a true crime detective movie almost, and have like the first part of the movie be like from Freddy's point of view, and then like have the rest of it be like from the John Saxton's character's point of view, have him like be a deputy or something. I think you could do something like that by meshing it together, but maybe it isn't really needed. Maybe it would be better if they just did like another sequel or something, and just like had a flashback thing to that with just Freddy like killing people as a human. Like maybe you could just like do that as like a first act of a movie or something, instead of making a whole movie about it. But at the same time, I don't really think it's needed at this point. But also at this point, that feels like the only really interesting thing you could do with the Freddy character, if you're still doing like the Robert Englund version. I mean, because of Robert Englund's age and stuff, of course, now, and because they want to appeal to a new audience, I think they would probably just want to reboot it again and just go in a new, entirely different direction. But I honestly don't think you need to. Like, Freddy being a dream killer and all that, you could just treat this character like a James Bond and just have like a new actor take over every time the other actor gets too old, and just start over and just have a new actor doing new sequels, really, and just playing it the way Robert Englund would. Not a straight imitation, but playing it similar, in the similar vein that Robert Englund was doing, while adding like his own spin on it. I feel like you could do that and just treat this character like a James Bond type character. That was really cool scene when Freddy was like taking over Jesse's body and trying to make him like kill his sister and all that. Or trying to get him to, so he could get a kill in and all that. It kind of doesn't make sense, though, because because Jesse's obviously not going to want to kill his sister. It would make more sense, like I've said before, if Freddy was like trying to get Jesse to murder people that he didn't like. Like it'd make more sense if Freddy was like trying to make him go after his dad or something, because Jesse really likes his sister. He loves his sister. He doesn't have a problem with her. So I think it would make more sense if he was trying to make him like go after his dad or whatever. But I think because they're still trying to reach like the kid market and the teen market with these movies, they don't want to involve the adults too much. They just want to kind of have them as the asshole parental figures and keep it more spearheaded on the teen and child characters, which I get. You know, you got to play to your audience. I think we're almost at the pool party with this movie. This movie's went by pretty quick. Maybe it's because I'm so used to, like, when I did the commentary for the Snyder Cut, I was like, damn, this thing's going on forever. But even though I love the Snyder Cut. But at the same time, though, I think that might have been part of it, why this one feels like it's going by so much faster, because this is a much shorter movie, obviously, than a 4-hour and something Snyder Cut. One thing I really like about these 80s horror movies in general, though, is they really feel real. Like, the people here feel real. Like, the ones from the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, they look like Hollywood kids. They look like people that you can't really relate to. Like, they look like people that spend, like, hours in front of the mirror with their hair and all that. Like, the pretty kids and all that who have the expensive stuff and all that. And it's just harder to relate to those types of people from an average audience point of view, because they do feel so, like, out of the world of that you live in as a person, I think. It's just so much easier to relate to these real type people, that they feel like, whether the acting's good or bad in some of these 80s movies, you just automatically relate to them better, the characters, because they just feel like more like real people. Everybody in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake looked like they belonged to like an emo band or something. But yeah, Lisa, like being rich and all that with this big pool party and everything, like hell, I'd be wanting to hang out with her all the time. She'd be the chick I'd be trying to hook up with, like easily at school in this universe because she's loaded. One big problem with this movie, though, is it doesn't really make sense why Lisa's character, like I just now realized it, but it doesn't really make sense why she's so interested in Jesse's character. Like Mark Patton is not an ugly guy or anything. Like he's a good looking guy, but he's like a pretty boy is what the way he comes off in this movie. But he's not a bad looking dude or whatever, so I get maybe like why she might be wanting to hook up with him just because he's attractive, but it feels weird because it's like they're trying to play it as like, oh, this is pure love or whatever, but it doesn't really work. Like I like the idea for it to have a character like torn between trying to be straight but not wanting to admit the fact that he is obviously gay. Like that's a cool idea, but at the same time though, it's like I don't really feel any kind of real connection between him and Kim Myers here, who plays the Lisa character. They don't have much in the chemistry department, which I guess is kind of makes sense if the character is actually meant to be gay. But at the same time, I do feel like if he's kind of torn between wanting to be straight and not wanting to admit he's gay, I feel like they might need to have something more here to where you really feel a connection between the two characters. Like she really does feel like just like a best friend character. It doesn't really make sense to me that she would be interested. Like I guess it's because it's from her point of view. I don't really get why she would be interested sexually in this guy to like wanting to be in love with him. Maybe like sleeping with him, that's fine, that makes sense, but I don't really get why she would want to like hook up with him to have like an actual romance is what I'm saying. Because of course this chick is rich, like wouldn't she be like going out with some kind of like uppity rich dude or something? Well, but at the same time, because the movie's not really from her point of view for the most of the first, like in over half of this movie, it's from Jesse's until like she becomes the main character when Jesse gets completely took over. So you don't really get a lot from her point of view about why she has feelings for him and stuff like that, really. And I think that is kind of a missed opportunity. The script could have been better here. Of course, we got the infamous tongue scene coming up here, which is really interesting. I believe Jack Shoulder, the director of this movie, has actually said that when it came time for the Jesse's like mutant Freddy tongue to come out of his mouth, that when he shot this scene, he couldn't stop laughing or whatever when he seen Mark Patton like walking around with it in his mouth. But he wanted to leave and let somebody else shoot this sequence because he didn't want Mark Patton to feel bad because he had to wear that prosthetic tongue on his mouth like all day when they were shooting this. Yeah, here we go. We got the makeout scene and we got the big tongue coming up here. The subtext of this movie is actually pretty... in an 80s way, it is kind of funny to think about when it happens. Like when the demon tongue comes out of the dude's mouth and stuff. It is kind of funny to think about when it happens. But I like that they're still treating the material seriously here. Like really... this could have been a huge, like, just a farce of a movie that was really stupid and made, like, people who have had problems with, like, repressing their sexuality and stuff, or people who are actually gay, like, feel bad because it just came off so silly and campy because it's an 80s film. But in a way, it does kind of work. Like, they're treating the material seriously here. They're not treating it as a joke. At least it doesn't feel that way. And I've heard the director say that he didn't get anything about the gay subtext and stuff like that in this movie, which is really weird to me. Like he never stopped to think like why this supposed straight character is like entering a gay bar. Like that never entered his mind. That's weird to me. That shows me that he was probably just really naive, I guess, because it was the 80s and he probably didn't put any thought into it. But the writer obviously knew what was going on here because you can tell this movie is deliberately written to be about that kind of subtext. What's funny is I've seen interviews with Jack Shoulder about this, and he's been like, if you wanted to see the movie as like the gay subtext, then yeah, you could just see the movie about a guy who's gay and can't deal with the fact that he's gay. And really, that is what this movie's about. I mean, it's not just like there if you want to see it. It's the whole movie. Like seriously, I don't like in the '80s. I get it, like how you would miss something like this because people didn't really understand this kind of stuff yet. But watching this movie nowadays, like honest to goodness, it's everywhere in this movie. Yeah, there's the line right there. Where Robert Russell's Grady is saying that, like the Mark. Yeah, I know everybody knows what I'm talking about, but I gotta call it out. Mark Patton is like, there's something trying to get inside my body, and Robert Russell goes, "Yeah, she's female, and she's waiting for you in the cabana, and you want to sleep with me." Yeah, it's like the gay subtext is so obvious. I mean, it's just so weird to me. Like some of the people who worked on this movie couldn't like see it. And I'm sure some of them are lying that they're saying that that wasn't what they intended to make because this movie, despite having a cult following, still has like a really bad reputation, really, amongst a lot of like Nightmare on Elm Street fans and just like horror fans in general because they wanted more of an actual Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And I get it. I completely understand why somebody wouldn't like this movie as a sequel to a Nightmare on Elm Street. But like I've said before, if you can just appreciate the movie for what it is as its own horror movie, which is really what this film is, then I think this is a good movie. A good horror flick. For an 80s B movie, this is a good horror flick. I think that's a David Bowie poster, like for one of his albums, right there on the side of the wall there. Definitely a very 80s feeling to this movie. Like the first movie, even though it came out in '84, I believe. I'm not sure when they shot it, but it was released in like '84. It has more of a, almost more of a contemporary feel to it, really, than this flick here does. Like this movie right here really feels '80s. And when you get to Nightmare on Elm Street 4, that really feels like mid 80s. Like Dream Master, that's one of the things I like about it. It really feels like pure mid 80s movie. Part of me wishes I could have went back and like watched these movies, like go back in time and watch each one of these Nightmare on Elm Street movies like in theaters when they came out, like on premiere days and stuff like that with the audience of that time, and just to see how people like reacted to the movies and stuff. I do wonder like how many audience members did get what this movie was actually going for, and I'm assuming that the majority probably didn't, but it does make me wonder like how many probably did get it or understand what this flick was going for. This is the best special effects sequence in the movie when Freddy comes out of Jesse's body. This is really cool practical effects sequence. I think one of the reasons Dream Warriors might come off as good as it does for people is because it comes after this film, and it goes back to what people really liked about that first one, where it comes directly after this one, which goes completely against what people really wanted after that first one. So yeah, I think that might be one of the things that amplifies the good qualities of Dream Warriors. But yeah, this is a great practical effects sequence. Even though, of course, by the end you can see how it's done with like Freddy coming out of the wall from behind Jesse or whatever when it switches to like Jesse being like a puppet type thing and all that. But when like his hand right here is like transforming into Freddy's hand, that's a really cool effect. It's really neat the way they do that. Nowadays, this would be all CGI, and it would look horrible. It would look like a cartoon. They've gotten to a point now with CGI where they're just lazy about it, where they're like, well, even if we don't need to do this in CGI, we'll just do it as CGI anyway, just to save time so we can just keep hurrying up. And that really damages the movies. It's just become like a lazy get out of jail tool. Even though you can kind of tell how they did the effect with Freddy coming out of the wall, like through Jesse and all that, it's still cut together well to where if you don't understand effects and stuff like that, like it'll play really well to you, I think. And I think just the effect itself still holds up as looking good, because practicals, even older practicals like this one with him coming out of Jesse's body, still there's just like a magical quality to them, because you can feel like the effort and stuff that went into it. With CGI, it's just like a couple dots on the computer. For cheap CGI, it does. But yeah, most CGI in horror movies is just kind of cheaply done, just done to be fast. It doesn't have, and I think part of it might be a budget thing to why CGI in horror movies comes off really bad, because a lot of horror movies don't have the budget to do really good CGI. It's just really lazy. And if you notice kind of like a jump thing in the way I was talking right there for a second until when I started talking about the CGI again, that's because I had to stop recording this to do something real quick and then had to like kind of bounce back into it. So that's why that's why you might notice a little jump in the way I was talking for a second. I really like the way Mark Patton does this scene though. His acting here is great, the way he's playing the victim and stuff. Really well done. I like Freddy taunting him like from the inside of the mirror and stuff. That's pretty cool. Like he sees Freddy's reflection and stuff in the mirror. It does make you wonder though, is like that kind of makes you wonder though when you see that scene right there with Freddy in the mirror, like are the people like seeing Jesse kill people and not actually seeing Freddy? But it does later on though, it does when he's attacking people here in a minute again, when he transforms back into Freddy, that does kind of let you know that it is Freddy that they're seeing. They're not seeing Jesse. But you could have done it like that, though. You could have made it to where Freddy was just like taking over the body, and the whole like him coming out of the body was more of a just like a spiritual thing, and that they were actually seeing Jesse kill people, and that was just more of like us seeing a visual for him taking over the body. You could have done it like that, and then had like Jesse arrested at the end for the murders. You really could have played it that way. But I'm fine with the way that they do end up doing it here. But you could have went that direction. But yeah, it's scenes like this, though, where Jesse's like telling Lisa about how he's killed everybody and all that, and how he knows it was him, that it really makes you wonder why Lisa is like so trusting of this dude. Like, why doesn't she just immediately call the police? Like, what is it about Jesse that makes her like so loving to this guy? They really never have a good reason for it in the movie. Mark Patton's acting here is great. Like, as the victim character, his acting is actually stronger, I think, slightly in some scenes than Heather Langenkamp was in that first movie. Like, some people don't like Heather Langenkamp in that first movie as Nancy, but I never had a problem with her. I thought she was great. But she is weaker in Dream Warriors, though. But like Mark Patton's acting right here in like this intense scene where he's like the victim and he's coming to grips with the fact that he's lost it and being taken over by Freddy. I actually think his acting here is a bit stronger than Heather Langenkamp in that first movie. But then again, he's also playing a totally different character, so it would be interesting. It's hard to compare the two really, because his character is so different. Like, this guy is a straight up victim the whole movie, so it's really almost impossible to compare the actual two performances, because he's going for something totally different. Of course, Freddy is heating up everything at the pool party, and he starts like setting fire to everything and locking everybody in. This doesn't really feel like Freddy's like MO at all from the first movie. This is like totally its own thing, which is why this movie doesn't really fit any of the films, any of the franchise, I mean. Which is also why it was pretty much ignored by every sequel going forward, because it goes against like everything, on nearly everything that was established in that first flick. I like that they're bringing back like the fear concept in this movie of like they had in the original where Freddy was like feeding off Nancy's fear and all that. And this one he's kind of feeding off Jesse's fear, which kind of gives you the idea that he's probably feeding off like Jesse's fear of his repressed sexuality and stuff like that, because that's what he's meant to represent in this one. So in the first movie it was more like Freddy was like the loss of innocence or the destruction of like childhood innocence or whatever. In this movie it's more like he's the repressed sexuality of this character. He's the fear of this dude being able to accept who he is. It makes you wonder, though, was the casting of Mark Patton in this movie like on purpose? Because I like Mark Patton. He does a great job here, but I don't really know if he could play a straight character. I guess he could if the director was getting him to like tone down certain things like his scream and all that, because that isn't the way like a normal, I mean, well, not normal, because there's nothing abnormal about being gay or anything, but what I mean is like an average straight kid wouldn't scream like that, obviously. But so if the director like really got Mark to play like a straight, just normal, or I said normal again, I don't know why I keep saying it, but if you really got him to play like an average, like straight character, straight male character, and got him to like tone down that scream, I think he could pull it off. Like if they took stuff out of the movie, like that whole like ass thing where he's bumping the dresser drawer closed, if they kind of took that stuff out of there and toned down some of the more like sexual stuff, I think he could have played a successful like straight 80s like dude character. But at the same time, though, the fact that he is obviously like meant to be a repressed gay guy in this movie, I like that. If he had just been like a straight average male character, I don't think this movie would have been as interesting, really, without the sexual subtext. I don't think there would be as much here. If this was just a movie, just like a straight possession slasher movie that just went its own way, because it's already going against what worked in that first movie and doing its own thing. But if they had eliminated like the gay subtext and all that and just had it be a movie about just a straight possession thing of just a guy getting possessed, I don't think this movie would have been as interesting, to be honest. I think it would have been more just totally forgotten. It's just like the black sheep of the series, really. Without the gay subtext, there isn't as much interesting here, I don't think. It's that part of it that makes this movie what it is to me. At this point, I still don't buy that Lisa and Jesse really have a connection, but I like the way they're playing it with part of Jesse still being inside of Freddy and all that, and her not able to like stab him and stuff. I like this right here when like Robert Englund like grabs Lisa and he's getting ready to attack her. Obviously, that's what he wants to do, but he still feels like Jesse inside of him, and he's like, "I love you, Lisa," and then he jumps out the glass door or whatever. That's pretty cool imagery and pretty cool scene. I like that the blades like come out of the fingers in this one. That's kind of a unique thing just to this movie. I like that. They kind of do something similar to that with New Nightmare, though, with the glove that he has in that. But that was based off like the poster of the original movie, where it's more like a mechanical type thing, where it's actually not a glove. It's just like blades on his actual hand. It's kind of similar to this, but the blades in New Nightmare, of course, were like much sharper than this. This is just like his regular standard glove blades that just come out of his hand or his fingers. But I like that as like a unique thing to this movie. That's kind of cool. And even though this whole pool party massacre thing right here goes totally against what was cool about Freddy in that first movie. Like, what's cool about Freddy is the fact that he is a dream killer, that he can do anything in dreams and nightmares. When you take Freddy out of the dream world aspect and you just have him like slashing teenagers up, it is still fun, but at the same time, it loses what makes Freddy cool as a concept and as a character. He just becomes any ordinary slasher villain. He's just another Jason or Michael Myers at this point, which, while still fun, really hurts like what was worked so well about that first movie for the Freddy character. Freddy just has like unlimited like magical powers here that just goes totally against like what they were doing with that first film. the Freddy in this film is like amped up way stronger power-wise than he was in that original. Like when he comes into the real world, he's got like, through Jesse's body here or whatever, he's got like godlike powers almost. He can do practically anything. He's almost like an evil genie here. This cracks me up right here, where this guy's like, hey man, calm down, it's alright. Of course, we get the great Robert Englund like retort to the guy or whatever. It's really funny. I like Freddy's makeup here. He looks great. He doesn't look like Freddy though, like from the first movie for what Freddy was meant to be and all that. This looks like a straight up demonic ghost villain, like slasher villain almost. I would say in some ways, Freddy Krueger himself is scarier in this second movie than he was in the first movie, because he talks more here, like when he's massacring people and stuff like that. But at the same time, they still keep him dark and he's not doing one-liners and stuff, so it still works really well here. But this movie itself is not as scary or as intense as that first movie. This is the type of sequel I can see a lot of people like go back on and be like, well, I can kind of accept it for what it is now, because we have so many like sequels that use Freddy in the way that most people would rather see him used, with expanding on the dream stuff and all that, like part 3 and part 4 do, and New Nightmare and stuff that brings him back to being dark and all that. So this is the type of sequel that a lot of people would be like, well, I can look back on it and appreciate it for what it is now. This really feels like one of those movies, and I can see why. I like that she has to go to the power plant and stuff that Freddy worked at when he was alive, and where he killed people when he was alive. That's pretty cool. We got the dogs with human faces here coming up, which is a total like stolen thing from Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake from the 1970s with Donald Sutherland. It's taken directly from that movie. It works fine here though. Like most movies, there's not really a such thing as a 100% original movie really. What matters is how like the films use the other ideas from other movies that they're taking inspiration from, while at the same time is the director able to present them in a way to where it's enjoyable to watch. Here with the dogs with the human face and stuff like that, it looks kind of cartoonish here. It does take away from like the scare factor here. It looked way better in the Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie. I like seeing this wide shot of the power plant and stuff, and if you look close in that big wide shot, when you see like Kim Myers walking around, if you look close in that shot, you can actually see Freddy walking around at the top of the thing. And whenever I watch this on DVD on like a big screen, I can always notice that. You can see him like inner frame actually, which is kind of neat. This movie still like has scenes where it's not like really dream based, but because we're in reality, they still try to have moments and stuff like that where the girl like trips out by seeing bugs on her leg and stuff like that, where Freddy bit her right here in a second, ants or whatever, before she realizes it's a hallucination. Like they're still trying to have like that kind of hallucinatory dream type aspect to the movie just a little bit. It does look gross and creepy though. It's almost like David Lynch inspired type stuff going on here. If you hear anything in the background, that's me turning around, of course, situating myself. But I do like the atmosphere of this boiler room type place here with the power plant and all that. This is a crazy scene right here. That's cool when the cat like eats the rat like out of nowhere and has like razor sharp teeth and is like screaming like a lion. And it's really over the top, but it is fun in that kind of silly, campy 80s way. At this point, though, the kind of like hallucination things are kind of starting to wear out. So I'm glad that Freddy has shown up at this point because we're pretty much in the climax of the movie here. This film doesn't really have much left. We're winding down. I like the idea that they've like switched it over here to where the Kim Myers character is now the lead, but I still don't understand why she loves Jesse so much. Like it really doesn't work. But at the same time, I like what they're going for here, though, with the whole switcheroo of the protagonist here, where she's now the hero. Freddy looks awesome in like some of these shots, like the way they're lit and stuff. Like he really looks like a monster type figure. I like how they're playing it up like really Shakespearean here, though. The way Robert Englund's acting with it is like a Beauty and the Beast type thing. He's really playing it up like a Shakespearean like stage actor type thing, which I think he did have some stage like what do you call it? Stage influence as an actor, because I think he did start on that kind of like stage acting stuff before he became like a character actor in movies and TV. I really felt that right with his performance in here, where he's doing like a almost Beauty and the Beast monster type thing between him and Jesse with the way he's reacting. I like that she has to kind of kiss Freddy to prove her love for Jesse to get him to like lose control or to be able to fight back. You can, though, kind of see that as homophobic, though, because of the fact that her straight love overpowers the gay beast or whatever that's Freddy Krueger and enables Jesse to have the strength to like fight back. You can kind of see that as homophobic. I mean, you can read that into it, but at the same time, though, I'm willing to accept like whatever message a movie wants to go for, even if I don't agree with it. Whatever the filmmaker wants to go for, it's the way I see it is we're watching the filmmaker's story, his movie or whatever for the audience. So I'm not, because somebody doesn't share my personal beliefs, I'm not willing to just put somebody down because they want to share their point of view on something, even if I don't agree with it. And at the same time, though, when we get to the final shot of this movie, I feel like it kind of retracts and goes against what you could read into this part. I'll get to it when I get there. But I guess I'll just go ahead and say it now. Like, obviously, the ending of this movie with like the Freddy hand coming out of the girl's chest and all that, you can read that as you can't really change a gay person, is what I'm saying. Like, you can't really force them to be straight if they are really gay. Like, even though she loves Jesse, like you can read a lot of deep stuff into this movie. Like, even though she loves Jesse, you can read it as the fact that she is trying to change him. to being straight or whatever, but at the end of the day, when the hand like bursts through the girl's chest, you can read that as like no matter what happens, like the dude's his real sexuality, his gayness or whatever, will not ever truly go away, because no matter what, he will never actually be straight. It's almost like an anti-conversion movie, really, like trying to force gay people to be straight, which is good because you can't really force somebody to be straight if they're gay. I mean, a person who is gay, like if they're doing that, they can like make themselves believe that they're straight, like they can trick their mind with enough, but they'll always know it in the back of their head that they're really not straight, no matter how hard they're trying to pretend to be straight, is what I'm saying. Like when you're gay, you really are just gay, and that's fine. And it's the same thing with straight. Like I couldn't really force myself to be gay, like, because I'm not gay. But I don't have any problem with being gay. But as a straight man, I couldn't do that, and I don't think a gay person could do it, like could force themselves to really be straight either, because in the back of their head they would always know that they are really gay. I mean, they could force themselves to do it if they wanted to do it bad enough. Like as a human being, you can force yourself to do like anything. But at the same time, though, you would always be gay. You couldn't get rid of that. Just like you would always be straight if you were trying to force yourself to be gay. It's the same thing. You can't really change your sexuality. It's like a biological thing. I do think that it would have been more poetic if Jesse had died at the end of this movie, but they're just like when Freddy, or when Jesse like comes out of Freddy's body and Freddy like melts or whatever. It's a really cool sequence, but I think it would have been more poetic if Jesse had like actually died in the scene. It would have been more heartbreaking and more of like a tragic romance type thing to it. Like it would have added to the fact of like her like trying to force him to be straight or whatever did end up killing him in the end because she loved him. I think you could have like made this like a tragic type thing with that. But as it is here it is where the movie ends the same way it started, which kind of brings it full circle, which I kind of like. Um, Even though this ending obviously is just put in here to be like a jump scare thing to end it similar to the first one, because they figured that's what audiences would want at the time, something like the first one's ending. But at the same time, though, I feel like the writer and the director were both going for like two different things here with this movie. Like, I think the director, Jack Shoulder, just thought he was just making like a Freddy Krueger possession movie, and the writer knew. Like, I think David Chaskin is the writer's name. Like from interviews and stuff like that, the guys admitted he did put the gay subtext in here on purpose in the script. So I think he knew what movie he was writing and they were making, and I just think the director didn't really. So at the same time, from a writing standpoint and a subtext standpoint, when the arm like bursts through the girl's chest right here in a minute for the final scare, I read that as like you can't really bury Jesse's character's like gayness or whatever, and that's always going to come back. And there's just no way to get rid of it, because that's what the guy is. He's gay. You just can't get rid of it. So that's the way I read it. I read this movie as a whole, really. And it's a horror movie, so you want to kind of go out on a scare, really, for a lot of them. Yeah, so that's pretty much the ending of Freddy's Revenge. I'd give it a 3 out of 4. As a standalone horror movie, I think this is a good B movie horror 80s flick about a repressed gay man character. Now that I watch it, it really doesn't read like a guy who's bisexual. It really does read like a character who is gay but can't admit he's gay. This really is like a gay themed horror film, and that's kind of what's cool about it, really. Like I've mentioned before, if you really did try to play this as a movie about a just a possession story, then I think this movie would be kind of boring, to be honest. It's the gay subtext in here that make this film interesting. As a horror movie, I think this is a good 80s like horror movie, and I really applaud it for having the guts to do the gay theme thing, even though apparently it was mostly by accident, except from the writer's standpoint, because nobody else really knew what the hell they were doing. Apparently, anyway, that's what they say. And Mark Patton, this kind of I think this kind of hurt his image for him. Like, I know he made a whole documentary about it, which I haven't actually watched, where it made him like leave Hollywood after this film because a lot of people noticed the gay subtext in this movie and stuff, like maybe a few years later and stuff like that. So it kind of made him like leave Hollywood because of the image and stuff. I think like his actor brand was hurt by this movie because he probably felt like he should be able to play like any type of character, and if people just saw him as like the gay guy, then he would only be limited to playing like gay characters and stuff like that. I think he really wanted to act and stuff, and I think that kind of just took an emotional toll on him. That and the fact that obviously there was a lot of homophobia going on in Hollywood and stuff like that, just the world in general at this time. There still is now, but a lot of people are more open now in terms of the entertainment industry and stuff. But yeah, all in all, I'd give it a 3 out of 4. This is a good, fine, gay themed horror film from the 80s. I like it. It's not the direction I'd want to see the series go in, but for what it is, I enjoy it. So we're at the credits here, still going, and the movie's pretty much about over. So thank you guys for listening if you stayed the entire time, and God bless you, and hope you have a good day, and I'll see you again with the commentary for part 3.